Alright, welcome back to Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars. I, of course, am your host, Richie Mars. I appreciate each and every one of you clicking on today's episode and listening to today's topic. Again, you could always follow us on the Instagram and the Twitter at Retold Richie Mars. Posts usually come out around when episodes come out, and I usually live tweet during Monday Night Raw, Friday Night SmackDown, and AEW Dynamite. I'm going solo this week, mostly because this is a topic that I really wanted to cover. Even though there hasn't been any request for it, this topic is near and dear to my heart, and that, of course, is the run that Tyson Kidd had in NXT and beyond. Now, for those of you who don't know who Tyson Kidd is presently, he is a WWE producer. He mostly works on the women's matches, helps put them together. So if you see a women's match on television, there's a good chance that Tyson Kidd is the one who helped formulate that match. But in a prior life, Tyson Kidd was actually an in-ring competitor himself, known to be a long associate of the legendary wrestling family, the Hart family. He was good friends with Teddy Hart, who is a relative of the Hart family, and got to know this generation's Hart family members, like Natalya, who he's married to, like David Hart Smith, like Teddy Hart. And they all started so young, too. Barely teenagers is when they started on this professional wrestling journey. So when Tyson Kidd was brought aboard, he was a part of a Hart Dynasty, a Hart family reboot in FCW, which included Teddy Hart, David Hart Smith. And then on the main roster, he was a part of the ECW 2009, I want to say, 2008, 2009 initiative, where the new class from FCW would graduate to become part of the ECW programming, where he was paired up with Natalya. David Hart Smith would later join Tyson Kidd, and they would become a tag team called the Hart Dynasty with Natalya as their manager. And they would go on to some pretty good success. Held the tag team titles, got a WrestleMania moment hitting a top rope heart attack onto the floor, onto the chairman himself. So things were going pretty good with Tyson Kidd and his career in WWE. But unfortunately, as most things do happen in WWE, the momentum will kind of stop. It's a give and take in WWE. And unfortunately, during this period of time, it was almost like if you win the tag team titles, shortly after that, your team is going to break up because there's only so many times you could win and lose the tag team titles in their eyes. And Tyson Kidd and David Hart Smith broke up. They had a very good match at WWE Superstars, and a lot of people poo-poo the quote-unquote C shows. You know, you have Main Event, you had Superstars, you had Velocity, you had Sunday Night Heat, but they came out with some very good matchups, a lot of hidden gems on those C shows, and I recommend you checking out on Peacock Velocity, Sunday Night Heat, Main Event, Superstars matchups, because it shows a lot of current stars of today kind of cultivating their craft now, and it's really cool to see them how they were before they hit the big time. So Tyson Kidd was a heel at this time. He was a bad guy. And for a guy his size, when the roster was pretty much bloated with bigger guys, this is before in WWE where they went on a signing binge of just signing every indie talent. That didn't really happen during this time. You had prominent names like Daniel Bryan and CM Punk, major independent names, go to superstardom in WWE. But at this time, everyone was still 6 foot and up, at least in terms of superstars. You have Edge, John Cena, Randy Orton, etc. Tyson Kidd, who's a little under 6 foot, but he's jacked. You know, but unfortunately that personality hadn't been cultivated yet. He had some excellent matches with a pre-Yes Movement Daniel Bryan, and he would go through a lot of different changes And I was a fan of Tyson Kidd at this time too. I thought he was a technical wizard. Every match was technically sound. And personally, I love technical wrestling. I like exchanges of moves, submission moves, and holds. I don't know why. It just really excites me. It's very impressive on how different transitions happen inside that ring. But Tyson Kidd didn't really have that character, but not for a lack of trying on the creative part, I noticed. Because they would always give him something to do. It would just take a while for them to get traction with any of things. And they didn't give him enough time to get traction with certain things. For example, in the last episode, I talked about WWE's favoritism for doing the Shawn Michaels Diesel thing. Whenever there's a small person they want to focus on being a superstar, they always have to have a big guy, a heater, a bodyguard, if you will, in order to make them look more imposing or intimidating if they are a bad guy. And Tyson Kidd got one. He debuted at the Slammy Awards, and his name was Jackson Andrews, currently residing in the Where Are They Now files of professional wrestling. That didn't last long, unfortunately. Wink, wink. Because Mark Henry, World's Strongest, slammed Jackson Andrews right out of the company. We never saw him again. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen. And then Tyson Kidd would be relegated to mostly Superstars matches, but they started doing this gimmick, I guess, where each week Tyson Kidd would come out with a different manager. One week it was Michael Hayes. He won with Michael Hayes, and the next week he lost with Michael Hayes, and Michael Hayes stormed out on him. And then the next week he was with Armando Estrada randomly. He was randomly out with Vicky Guerrero one week. He was out with Matt Stryker. JTG was a manager, and you could tell they liked Tyson enough to give him all of this, but nothing ever really stuck. Until we get to NXT, where Tyson Kidd becomes a pro on the season NXT Redemption. Now I'm going to put a little pause for the cause right here and talk to you about NXT Redemption. Because this is in this weird period of time where they're still doing the NXT game show thing. And they're trying to make it way more complicated than it needs to be. So how NXT Redemption works, it was a pretty unique concept where this was season 5 of NXT, and all the NXT rookies, quote unquote, were paired up with superstars. But these NXT rookies already were on a season of NXT. Like Darren Young, he was on it. He was on season 1. Lucky Cannon, he was on season 2. And then you had Byron Saxton, who was on season 4, etc., etc. And Tyson Kidd was one of the pros on this show. And instead of people getting eliminated, people would either win immunity or get redemption points. But the greatest thing is there was no real winner. There was a winner. Okay, let me explain. So there was a winner, but they only won. It was Derek Bateman, who later became EC3, who won the season. But he won because all the other competition either got eliminated or moved up to the main roster. So what a way to win a competition is by default, essentially. But then this NXT Redemption show turned into this, I guess, what NXT 2.0 was or is now. It was a developmental system for people who were in that main roster to developmental purgatory. It was essentially a C or D show, I guess people would say. But it was a fairly entertaining show because it had a lot of guys, lower card guys, who didn't get a chance on Raw or SmackDown at this time. This was 2012, 2011 era. So there was only so many spots you could fill on the main shows. So Tyson Kidd would one day be a heel, but so then he transitions and all of a sudden he's a babyface, and he got a very good crowd reception to being a babyface too. And it started with this feud with Yoshitatsu, where the character of Yoshitatsu would have a shrine to his action figure. And Tyson Kidd later beat him up and then stole his action figure and then broke his action figure and and was carrying, I think it was his leg, around his neck like a necklace. And this culminated in a action figure on a pole match against Yoshitatsu and his new character. But after that, Tyson Kidd would shortly turn to the side of good, and they actually had an angle I really liked. Curtis Axel gets a lot of grief for not being as good as his father, but he is a very solid talent in his own right. So the main feud that Tyson Kidd was on in NXT Redemption was against Curtis Axel. And Curtis Axel, who was named Michael McGillicuddy at that time, which is a mouthful of a name in itself, was taunting Tyson for acting like he was a generational superstar for his association with the Harts, but he's not an actual blood relative, which is a really interesting story. And I wish they would incorporate that to a main roster, because that's a very relatable story for people who have been adopted or are a part of families where they're not necessarily blood related, but they still feel a part of the family. But there's always going to be those kids where it's like, oh, those aren't your real parents. So it was the same thing here. Michael McGillicuddy didn't like Tyson, was using the Hart name to further his own career, and felt disrespected by it. And Tyson Kidd took umbrage with that. Michael McGillicuddy won the first match, and Tyson Kidd wanted a rematch to prove he was as good as Michael McGillicuddy, but Michael McGillicuddy kept blowing him off. And then Tyson Kidd kind of goaded him into the rematch. And I remember Tyson Kidd was very interactive on Twitter at the time, and he created this new finisher, which looks really cool. It's kind of like you put him in the position for a sharpshooter, but then you transition into a triangle choke. And I thought that was really cool. And he's like, what should I name my finisher? I submitted, I think I was 17 or 18 at the time. I submitted my idea. I was like, oh, the Dungeon Death Trap. I'm like, that's gotta be it. But he later settled on the Dungeon Lock, and I'm like, oh man, but that's how it went. So Tyson Kidd was cultivating his own path as a single star. Meanwhile, while this is happening, he kind of finishes up with Michael McGillicuddy, finishes that off. And then he would have a couple matches with Trent Beretta, and there was a tease that he would team up with Trent Beretta, who's later Trent in AEW. But then Trent got hurt, and then Tyson Kidd pivoted towards a couple of series of matches with Justin Gabriel of Nexus fame, and they decided to become a tag team, unofficially named the International Airstrike, where both of them are kind of high flyers, but Tyson's the more grounded one, Justin Gabriel's the more high-flying one. They even made it onto a WrestleMania pre-show for the tag team titles, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what it was. They were on the WrestleMania 28 pre-show, which is the same WrestleMania where The Rock faced John Cena for the first time. Once in a lifetime, that became twice in a lifetime that we always talk about. 2012 was kind of a pivotal year for Tyson Kidd. He would be in that year's SmackDown Money in the Bank ladder match that was won by Dolph Ziggler and included a very scary spot where Tyson tried to spring off the ropes and do a sunset flip, but Dolph just face plants, and it looked like it killed him. Then again, what other Dolph Ziggler move he takes looks like it kills him. But then Tyson Kidd, unfortunately, later in the year would tear his ACL, get knee surgery, and so he's out for a majority of the year of 2012 and 2013 as well. But when he comes back, there's still some buzz about Tyson Kidd because this was the period of time where Total Divas happens. And a lot of people like to rag on Total Divas. They like to say, oh, it's just reality trash TV. It's pointless. But it did generate a lot of buzz for the company and for the fans in general, and help bring women's wrestling to the forefront, where at a time they were only getting 2-minute matches, 30-second matches, 90-second matches, and you're trying to fit an entire division and trying to get that exposure on a 2-hour show, 3-hour show. It was just ridiculous and absurd. But Tyson Kidd is his whole character on the show is Tyson is a wrestling fanatic and he just wants to watch his wrestling. And Natty's trying to work on their relationship, and he's like, "Oh, there's a pay per view on. Let me just watch the pay per view first." It was pretty funny, and the season one culminated in their wedding. And the main storyline was Natalia's friend was trying to steal her away from Tyson. It was just a lot of funny stuff. Funny stuff. And Tyson Kidd and Natalia are still married to this day. And Tyson Kidd would still be a featured star on Total Divas until his retirement, but we're not at that point yet. So Tyson Kidd returns to Natalia's side, but he's mostly relegated to WWE Main Event and Superstars. And it isn't until he goes back to a newly established NXT that he really begins coming into his own. So at this point, NXT has begin to progress into not just a developmental show. It's going to be WWE's third brand, essentially. And during this time, I like to dub it the network era, because that's when the WWE Network was first being instituted. NXT held their first live show on the network, and I think it was the first show on the network, period, called NXT Arrival. And then the next show was going to be NXT TakeOver, which everyone knows now. And almost every other month, it seemed like at the time, that NXT TakeOver was going to be a part of the regular scheduled pay-per-view lineup. And the first NXT TakeOver was headlined by Adrian Neville, who later became Pac and was known as Pac in AEW, against Tyson Kidd. Tyson Kidd, Sami Zayn, and Tyler Breeze all fell out at the same time in a battle royal to crown the number one contender. But they all touched the floor at the same time, so now we have a triple threat match, and Tyson Kidd came out on top. And the story was Neville was going on this incredible run as champion thus far, and Tyson Kidd wants to get the feeling back of the importance of the main roster. Winning the NXT Championship would be another notch to bring on to the main roster, another bragging right, so to speak. But this is the time where the crowd kind of started chanting Natty's husband, with Neville pushing on that fact. And in a macho sport like wrestling, you don't want to be known as somebody's husband. You want to be your own star. And Natalya at this time had a couple Divas Championship runs. She had a couple high-profile storylines. Some say a little bit more spotlight than Tyson did at this time. And they main evented the first ever TakeOver, and it was a really good match. And Tyson Kidd at this time, his role in NXT was kind of cultivate that roster. It seemed like Tyson Kidd worked with everybody. He worked with Sami Zayn, Tyler Breeze, The Ascension. You name it, from anybody from that era of NXT, Tyson Kidd worked with him. He was really the glue that kind of made every one of his matches work. And like I said before, he's so technically sound. Like, he moves flawlessly. It's almost like a Randy Orton-esque kind of movement where Orton never looks out of place. Tyson Kidd is like Randy Orton in that regard, just with a fast forward button. Like, every move he would make is just pristine and perfect. And at the end of the match, Neville wins with the black arrow or red arrow, pins Tyson Kidd, offers him a handshake, and Tyson Kidd gives him the old shoulder to shoulder walk past nudge. So he's not paying any mind to it. He's just pissed that he lost. Next time on NXT television, Tyson said, Natalya lost before me, which is true. Natalya lost the NXT Women's Championship final to Charlotte Flair. And Tyson said that distracted him from winning this match, and he wants a rematch. So there's a rematch set, and Tyson tries to use a chair, but Natalya grabs the chair from him, saying he shouldn't win like that. And of course, that leads to a big enough distraction that Neville once again wins the match. Tyson Kidd is furious, and you could see him slowly turn to the dark side because he had it won with the chair shot. He had it won, but Natalya cost him that moment to get that singles glory that he never was able to obtain. Just going to take a quick time out here, and Tyson Kidd going back to NXT did a lot to revitalize his career, but this probably wasn't always the plan for Tyson Kidd. Because it was revealed on WWE The Bump, and Tyson Kidd later posted on Instagram that there was a new character that he was trying to develop during this time called TK1. That was the working name, and he was a masked, full bodysuit, Spider-Man-esque character with the hype video pitch being, we all wear masks in our everyday life, so why don't I wear this mask to show who I really am about? And the mask was like a full bodysuit, so picture Rey Mysterio, Halloween Havoc, the full bodysuit action, but with devil horns on top, and it looked really sick. Like the whole thing was airbrushed too, and I'm like, oh man, that's so cool. So this is what I think happened. Tyson Kidd went back to NXT to kind of get the ball rolling on this character, but they decided to go in this other direction, which I thought worked just as well, which is the Natty's husband character, where Tyson Kidd was feeling, he wasn't showing it, but you could tell it's a little insecurity of being called Natty's husband when you're trying to make your own way as a WWE superstar, hopefully champion one day. And this leads to one of my favorite matches of all time, which is the NXT Fatal 4-Way with Adrian Neville defending the NXT title against Tyson Kidd, Tyler Breeze, and Sami Zayn. And when I tell you this is probably one of the most underappreciated matches of NXT history because NXT had so many bangers of matches, I really do mean it, because a lot of these guys who, when they transitioned to the main roster, you could argue they never attained the goal that they were always in the main event every night, but they showed up here, and it was just action from bell to bell, and everyone played their roles perfectly. And Tyson Kidd even transitioned his ring attire a little bit too. Still had the airbrush gear, but it was just spandex shorts, had Kidd on there. He was wearing like a boxing ring jacket to the ring, which he later spray painted with like cat claws or claw marks. And his character was, he would just wear his cats, airbrushed versions of his cats on his gear, which I thought was hilarious, and it was so cool. But this is kind of almost like Tyson Kidd's swan song in NXT at this time, because they made the Natty's husband character or gimmick go up to TV. And he would get some test out runs in main event against stars like Kofi Kingston, who wasn't Kofi Kingston of the New Day that is today, against Sami Zayn when Sami Zayn was just doing main event runs. And he was doing these subtle heel things that I thought were phenomenal. And I think he said that Teddy Hart came up with a lot of these ideas. Like during the match, instead of the old classic, put the valet in front of the wrestler so you don't get hit, there was one spot that I remember, it was a main event match, and Sami Zayn was trying to grab Tyson by the head, but what Tyson did was he just pulled Natty close to him like he was giving her a hug, but because of that, Sami Zayn couldn't lift Tyson on the ropes, and then Tyson just chops his legs and then hit the fisherman net breaker for the win. Just really creative stuff that you don't really see nowadays in wrestling when you have managers or valets, where it's always just, oh, this person's got an interference, oh, distraction, oh, weapon shot, 1, 2, 3, boom. Tyson Kidd would implement more creative ways to use Natalya, and I thought it worked perfectly with his character. But on his way out, Tyson Kidd did play a very important role in the Sami Zayn arc of NXT, where Sami Zayn was trying to find that killer instinct to become NXT champion. And Tyson Kidd was kind of the first roadblock that he had to face before he would get another shot. And at this point, Tyson Kidd was then full-time back on the main roster, where he was basically acting like he was Natty's coach, and his Uncle Brett always taught him, and he was like preaching, Uncle Brett always taught me, like like Natalia's legit uncle is Bret Hart, but Tyson Kidd, like we established, isn't blood relative. I just thought it was funny. And it also leads to one of my favorite triple threat matches. You're seeing a pattern here with these Tyson Kidd matches, where it's Dolph Ziggler defending the Intercontinental Championship against Cesaro and Tyson Kidd, which is kind of the genesis of the Tyson Kidd Cesaro team as well. And if you just want a 10-minute match where it's just action from bell to bell, this is the match you need to watch. It's on YouTube, it's on Peacock, so you have no excuse not to watch back this phenomenal piece of storytelling, with Cesaro being that powerhouse, with Dolph Ziggler fighting against the odds, with Tyson Kidd becoming the sniveling bad guy trying to get that one victory. It's a triple threat elimination match. I can't say good enough things about it. I definitely recommend it. But at this time, WWE has a very unique trope, and when I say unique, it's tale as old as time. When you have two single stars who aren't really doing anything, throw them together, see how they work out as a tag team. That's what happened with Tyson Kidd and Cesaro. At this time, Cesaro was kind of put on blast by Vince McMahon during the Stone Cold podcast, saying that Cesaro couldn't connect with the fans, which I never really understood. Because Cesaro can connect with the fans, but it's mostly through his physical acumen and his feats of strength rather than his verbal charisma. But anyway, they threw Cesaro and Tyson Kidd as a tag team, and they became, get ready for this, hashtag BTE, and also the Brass Ring Club. And they had like a knockoff Bullet Club t-shirt with the Brass Ring Club, which I thought was pretty funny. And they also had hashtag BTE like hats, which I think BTE stood for best team ever. And they really did gel well together, with Cesaro being the powerhouse of the duo, the quick powerhouse, which you don't really see at a guy his size, Cesaro, and Tyson Kidd being the technical wizard that he is. And they implemented a lot of different unique tag moves that we haven't seen before. Like Cesaro would hold somebody up in the suplex, and Tyson Kidd would come down with a slam. Cesaro would do the giant swing, and then Tyson Kidd would come in with a drop kick. Just unique stuff like that we haven't seen. And that's what I think Tyson Kidd is so well in his matches. Everything's just so tightly knit and unique to him that it's not like a cut by numbers match you're seeing. You're always going to see something new implemented in each one of his matches. And they had a very good run. They won the tag team titles from the Usos. They defended them at WrestleMania 31. Things were going on track. They were having a feud with the New Day. And this was, in my opinion, the peak of Tyson Kidd's career. But unfortunately, sometimes things come to an end. This is the night after Elimination Chamber, and in a dark match, Samoa Joe faced off against Tyson Kidd, hit the Muscle Buster for a finish, and Tyson Kidd breaks his neck. And this wasn't an ordinary neck injury. This was the Christopher Reeves neck injury. For those of you who don't know who Christopher Reeves is, he was the first major actor to play Superman. And he broke his neck from the waist down, leaving him unfortunately paralyzed for the rest of his life. With Tyson Kidd, he tweeted out that only 5% of people survived this injury, and that he had 16 staples, 4 screws, and a rod inserted into his neck. And it's unbelievable that he survived as well as he did, because he still walks under his own power. And it's just insane. To think how muscular his neck is just to survive that catastrophic injury. Seriously, 95% of people die from that injury. And for those who make it out alive, I think they tweeted out maybe 3% actually live, and of those 3%, 97% or 99% end up paralyzed forever. And Tyson Kidd came out of his own power. That's just incredible that he's still going as well as he did today. And unfortunately, that was the end of the in-ring career of Tyson Kidd. But that doesn't mean that his career in WWE or in other ventures has just stopped. Because usually when people have a dramatic injury like that, they play it safe. They do it. They're just done. But with Tyson Kidd, he didn't just sit back on his ass. Sure, he had a time where he felt sorry for himself. But he decided to get into the best shape of his life. I believe he had a bet with his friend to see who would get in the better shape by a certain point. I think that's the story. But that really inspired him to work on his supplement company, Workhorse Fitness, where they would have protein powder, BCAAs, pre-workout, workout apparel, etc. I know this because I purchased a few and it's high quality stuff. I recommend you check it out if you are inclined to do so and you want to start working out. They have some breakdowns on what each supplement does, like the fat burners, like the BCAAs, the pre-workouts, etc. And he also became a producer / agent for WWE. Like I said before, they put together the matches for the Superstars. And again, he's just helping cultivate that women's division into becoming the best division it could possibly be. And it's leagues above where they were 10, 15 years prior to Tyson Kidd becoming a producer. I think there was actually a story where I think it was Lana that said she wouldn't come to do a cameo for the Royal Rumble if Tyson Kidd wasn't producing it. That's how much trust Tyson Kidd has amongst that roster of women, that he is a well-trusted person to be in the position that he's in. But overall, in my opinion, Tyson Kidd is such a hidden gem of a superstar. Not just in WWE, but wrestling in general. Because you see his body of work. You see how tight it is, how well he does in different match types like Fatal 4-Ways, triple threat matches, solo matches, tag team matches. And he just thrives, and his creativity is just off the charts. And WWE is in really good hands with the position that he's in. But if I were to recommend any Tyson Kidd matchups, here are the matches I would recommend. I said a couple already throughout this podcast, but you're going to hear them again. The NXT Fatal 4-Way match for the NXT Championship with Neville, Sami Zayn, Tyler Breeze, and Tyson Kidd, I definitely recommend. Check that out on Peacock. The Triple Threat Elimination Intercontinental Championship match with Cesaro, Dolph Ziggler, and Tyson Kidd. Phenomenal stuff for as short of a time they were given. Great stuff all around from all three competitors. And last but not least, I would recommend his tag team title victory with Cesaro against the Usos at Fastlane 2015. Yes, that is the pay-per-view. Overall, it's superstars like Tyson Kidd that help cultivate and parlay the superstars of today in ring and out of the ring that make people like him so special to the industry. Even though they're not given the spotlight in terms of promo work, promotion, all that, they help mold the superstars they're facing into becoming better all-around performers. And that's why we need more Tyson Kidds in this world of professional wrestling in general. So that does it for this episode of Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars. I, of course, am Richie Mars. You could always check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Retold Richie Mars. New episodes drop every Tuesday. Thank you so much for listening. And I will see you next time. TTFN, ta-ta for now.